February 1st, 2024. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel, Patriot Prepper 82. I'm Kelly. I'm here to share with you some tips and tricks on how to survive any crisis or emergency, whether it's a pandemic, civil unrest, a natural disaster, or grid down scenario. I've got you covered. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking about one of the most serious and realistic threats we face today, a grid down situation. What is a grid down situation? How can it happen? What will happen if the grid goes down? How can we prepare and survive in a grid down situation? These are just some of the questions that I will be answering in this podcast. But before I get started, I'd just like to let y'all know. So yesterday, our government announced that China is planning on hitting the U.S. with a cyber attack or multiple cyber attacks. Man, this is a real threat. It's not really if it's going to happen. It's just when. We got to take this shit seriously and make sure we prepare for it. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So what is a grid down situation? Well, grid down situation is a scenario where the electrical grid, which is a network of power plants, transmission lines, substations, and distribution lines that supply electricity to our homes, business, and industries, is severely damaged or destroyed and cannot be restored for a long time. A grid down situation can affect a local area, a region, a country, or shit, even the whole world, depending on the cause and extent of the damage. A grid down situation can last for days, weeks, months, or even years, depending on the severity of the damage and the availability of resources and manpower to repair it. But y'all know, so our grid is outdated. It's been outdated for a very long time now. Will that make it easier for them to do a cyber attack? I don't know. But all right, so how can a grid down situation happen? A grid down situation can happen due to various factors such as a natural disaster, such as earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, fires, volcanic eruptions, solar flares. These can damage or destroy power plants, transmission lines, substation, distribution lines, or disrupt the balance between the supply and demand of electricity, causing blackouts or brownouts. Also, cyber attacks, such as hacking, malware, ransomware, denial of service attacks. These can target the computers, software, and communication systems that control and monitor the grid, causing errors, malfunctions, or shutdowns of grid components, or comprising the security and reliability of the grid. EMPs, or electromagnetic pulse. I'm sorry. These are intense bursts of electromagnetic energy that can be caused by nuclear weapons detonated in the atmosphere or by non-nuclear devices that have generated powerful electromagnetic fields. These can fry or damage the electronic devices and components that are essential for the operation of the grid, such as transformers, circuit breakers, relays, or controllers, rendering them useless. Next is solar flares or coronal mass ejections. These are massive eruptions of plasma and magnetic fields from the sun that could reach the Earth in a matter of hours or days. I guess just depending on the speed. These can introduce geomagnetic storms that can interfere with the Earth's magnetic field, causing surges or spikes of electrical currents in the grid, which can overload or burn out the grid components or trigger protective devices to shut down and the grid get damaged. Next is war, sabotage. These can involve intentional or accidental attacks on the grid infrastructure, such as bombing, shooting, cutting down power lines, or planting explosives or devices that can damage, disable the grid's components, or cause fire or explosion that can spread to other parts of the grid. Uh, some serious shit right there. So what will happen if the grid goes down? Well, if the grid does go down, uh, it will have a cascading effect on almost every aspect of our modern life, such as our communications. I mean, without electricity, most of our communication devices and systems, such as our phones, radios, TVs, computers, our internet, satellite, uh, GPS, that'll all stop working or become unreliable. This will make it difficult or impossible to communicate with your family, friends, authorities, or to access information about news on the situation. Next, transportation. And without electricity, most of our transportation modes and systems, such as cars, trains, buses, planes, traffic lights, will stop working or become unsafe. This will make it difficult or impossible to travel or commute, or to transport goods or services, or to evacuate or relocate if we have to. Next, water. So without electricity, most of our water sources and systems, such as our wells, pumps, pipes, treatment plants, will stop working or become contaminated. This will make it difficult or impossible to access clean and safe water for drinking, cooking, washing, or sanitation. Food. So without electricity, most of our food sources and systems, such as farms, factories, stores, refrigerators, will stop working. Our food will become spoiled. This will make it difficult or impossible to access fresh, nutritious food, for eating. Nutritious. Nutritious, health. I'm sorry. So without electricity, most of our health services and system, such as hospitals, clinics, pharmacies, medical devices will stop working or become unavailable. This will make it difficult or impossible to access healthcare or medication for injuries, illnesses, chronic conditions, or to prevent or treat infections or disease. Security. Without electricity, most of our security services, such as systems, as police officers, fire, military, alarms, will stop working and become overwhelmed. This will make it difficult or impossible to protect ourselves and our property from crime, violence, or looting, or to have assistance from other authorities, such as your emergency responders, police, stuff like that. Society. So without electricity, most of our social services and systems, such as schools, banks, courts, government, will stop working, become dysfunctional. This will make it difficult or impossible to access education, your money, justice, governance, or to maintain law and order or stability. So how can we prepare to survive in grid down situation? Well, a grid down situation can be challenging and dangerous, but it's not impossible to survive. The key is to prepare in advance and to adapt and improvise during this crisis. Here are some steps we could take to prepare and survive in a grid down situation. The first one is have a plan. A plan is a set of actions that we could take to achieve our goals and to deal with that situation. A plan can help us organize our thoughts, to prioritize our tasks, to allocate our resources, to coordinate our actions. A plan can also help us reduce stress, to increase confidence, and to improve our performance. Just remember, a plan should be realistic, flexible, adaptable, and you should consider, some of the following factors. The scenario. So what caused the extent of the power grid situation? How long will it last? How will it affect us and our area? The location. Uh, where are we, and where do we want to be? Do we want to stay at our home, or do we want to bug out to another location? What are the advantages and disadvantages to each option? Well, on this, I'll let you know uh, as far as where bugging in, bugging out. Most time you're going to be bugging in, whether it be at your retreat or your home, where you already have your supplies, all your gear, your food, your water, your medication. Uh, I would say 95% of the time, it's actually a better option or safer to just bug in, stay where you're at, unless you're in immediate harm or there's danger, house is on fire. Then yes, of course, time to bug out. But I would just make sure you think about that one real good prior to making your decision. So next, so people, who are we? Who are we with? How many people are in your group or your family? What are their needs and abilities? How we'll be able to communicate with them? Supplies. What do we have and what do we need? How much food, water, medicine, and other essentials do we have or can acquire? How will we store or preserve them? How will we ration and rotate them? Next, our skills. So, what do we know and what do we know that we need to learn? That's a big one. What do we know and what do we need to learn? We should be working this, especially, we should be working on this daily, at least weekly. But what skills do we have and can we acquire that can help us to survive or thrive during a grid down situation? How can we practice or improve them? Next, threats. What are the risks and dangers that we face or may face in a grid down situation? How can we avoid them or reduce them? How can we defend or protect ourselves from them? So we should already be thinking about this way prior to it happening. So that's kind of just over the plan. Having a backup, right? Uh, a backup is a secondary or alternative option that we can use in case our primary or preferred option fails or becomes available or unavailable. I'm sorry. A backup can help us cope with uncertainty, to overcome challenges, to solve problems, to survive crisis. A backup should be reliable, accessible, and compatible. Some of those, so we need to consider the power. What are the alternative sources of power we can use and grid to grid goes down? How can we generate, store, or use it? What are the devices or appliances that we can use or need, such as say generators, solar panel, batteries? That's some of the most common ones. So communication. Uh, so what are the alternative modes of communication? Uh, how can we access, operate, or maintain it? What are the messages or information that we need to send out or receive? How are we going to do that? Whether it be via ham, radio, CB, walkie-talkie, smoke signals. I don't know exactly what y'all's plans is, but we need to have them. We need to have these plans already. They need to be in motion already. Transportation. With all these electrical vehicles or newer vehicles where you have all these damn electrical devices in there, transportation. So what are the alternative modes of transportation that we can use if the grid does go down? And again, how can we access, operate, or maintain them? What are the routes or destinations that we could travel or where we have to reach them? Whether it be a bike, four-wheeler, older vehicles. Shit, if we on foot, we need to be thinking about that now. Water. Where are some alternative sources of water that we can use in case the grid goes down? How can we collect it, store it, or use it? How can we purify, filter, or treat the water? You know, whether it be tying some socks or rags around your ankles and walking in the grass early mornings collecting dew. Tying bags around tree leaves on the trees, collecting water if the sun's out. Ponds, streams, what are we going to use to filter our water or purify it? We need to be thinking about that. Food. Again, what are some alternative sources of food that we can use in case the grid goes down? How are we going to grow it, harvest it? How are we going to use it? How are we going to process, preserve, or cook it? More than likely, if the grid goes down, unless you have, your solar, your generator, you're going to be cooking on Coleman camp stoves, open fire, barbecue pits. We need to be planning on that now. Health. What is our alternative source of healthcare or medication? What can we use in the case of the grid does go down? How are we going to access, use, or store it? How can we prevent, treat, or heal injuries, illnesses? Because in a long-term grid down situation, hospitals, yes, they do have generator backups, but they only have a certain amount of fuel. I know we can store medications, but there's people that need medications daily. How much medication have you stockpiled? How do you rotate it to where it don't expire before use? People that need to be on oxygen, how are we going to obtain that? So anyway, security. So what are some alternative sources of security or protection that we could use, if the grid goes down? I mean, we already talked about most times the grid goes down, so our phones are not going to work. There's no calling your local police department or sheriff department or calling an ambulance because you got hurt. We got to think about that. But I know I went over quite a bit of information, and I didn't want to go into a whole lot of detail. I was trying to keep this video as short as possible. But remember, the key to surviving any emergency situation is preparing for it and being able to adapt. I hope this video had given you some valuable insights into how to prepare if the grid does go down. Just stay safe. Thanks for watching. Until next time, Patriot Prepper out.